So, we always try to bring the most thought-provoking material to this deep dive. And this conversation between Yuval Noah Harari and Raskin definitely fits the bill.
Oh, absolutely. It's like they took all the hype surrounding AI and just peeled it back to reveal these deeper questions about like society and humanity, and it really gets you thinking.
Yeah, it does. One of the first things that struck me was Harari's point about the sheer speed of AI development. He compares it to the Industrial Revolution, but says this time it's even bigger and faster.
Right, and he keeps emphasizing that AI is unlike any technology we've seen before because it's inorganic. It doesn't have those limitations like we do as humans, so it evolves at this crazy rate much faster than we can adapt.
Like trying to outrun a bullet train.
Exactly. Think about the trains themselves. When they first came about, the impact might have seemed small, but fast forward, and they completely reshaped societies, economies, the whole landscape.
It makes you wonder, can we even keep up with this pace of change?
And that's where this whole accelerationist argument comes in that Raskin and Harari discuss. It's like this belief that we should develop AI as fast as possible, no matter the risks, because the potential benefits are just that huge.
I'm almost like saying, hey, let's jump off this cliff and hope we learn to fly on the way down.
Yeah.
I mean, progress is great, but ignoring the risks completely seems a bit reckless.
That's precisely their point. They bring up this chilling parallel. The Bolshevik Party in Russia, they were so convinced they were creating a perfect society that they justified all sorts of harmful actions, in pursuit of their utopia.
Makes you think, could we fall into that same trap with AI blindly chasing progress without really considering the potential downsides?
They seem to think it's a real danger and one we need to be very aware of.
Okay, that's pretty sobering. But how does all this connect to our everyday lives? It feels a bit abstract.
Well, they argue that we've already had our first contact with AI's decision-making capabilities, and to be honest, the results aren't pretty.
Really? How so?
Think social media algorithms. That's our initial encounter with AI right there, and they're not doing so well. These algorithms, their whole goal is to increase user engagement, but they've actually had a really destabilizing effect on democracies globally.
Hold on, those pesky algorithms that keep me scrolling for hours are actually undermining democracy. How does that even work?
It's all about incentives. You see, these algorithms are designed to keep us engaged, not informed, and sadly outraged and divisive content. That stuff tends to be way more engaging than like reasoned discourse.
So they prioritize the stuff that triggers us emotionally, even if it's harmful and misleading.
Exactly. And it creates these echo chambers where we're constantly bombarded with information that just confirms our biases. It becomes harder to have real conversations to find common ground,
Like we're being manipulated without even realizing it.
That's the danger they're highlighting. And they point to a very specific example, Facebook's refusal to remove the reshare button.
Oh, yeah, I remember that whole debate.
They knew it was contributing to the spread of misinformation, but the incentive to keep people hooked was just too strong. It really exemplifies that short-sighted thinking that we need to avoid as AI becomes more powerful.
So we need to be aware not just of the shiny new tech, but also the motivations behind it and the potential downsides.
Absolutely. We can't just get swept up in the excitement. We have to be critical and ask the tough questions.
Well, on that note, they bring up another development that really caught my eye, generative AI. They see this as a turning point where human-generated content could become the minority. Deepfakes AI-generated social media profiles. The lines between human and artificial are blurring.
Right, and generative AI like ChatGPT, it uses these incredibly complex algorithms to learn from massive data sets of text and code, and it can create some seriously realistic content, from writing poems to composing music, even coding software.
It's mind-blowing, but also a bit scary.
Yeah.
How do we know what's real anymore when AI can create content that's virtually indistinguishable from human-created content?
That's the million-dollar question. And Harari and Raskin, they're not sugarcoating it. They say the stakes are incredibly high. This isn't some futuristic technology that might impact us someday. It's happening now.
So it's not enough to just focus on developing safe AI. We have to address the existing trust deficit between humans if we want any hope of governing AI effectively.
Exactly. It's like building a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. The whole thing is bound to collapse eventually.
Okay, so they painted a pretty stark picture so far. But they do offer some solutions, right? They don't just leave us hanging with this sense of impending doom.
Absolutely, they do. But before we dive into those, I think it's crucial to understand the historical context they bring up. It really sheds light on how we got here and the potential pitfalls we need to avoid.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's dive into that next.
Harari, being a historian, he brings this really unique perspective to the table. He argues that the problem with new technology often isn't the destination. It's like the journey we take to get there.
Oh, I like that. Go on.
It's like people often don't know how to use powerful new tools beneficially, and we end up running these dangerous experiments on ourselves and society.
That's a good point. It's not just about the tech itself, but about our understanding of it and our ability to use it wisely.
Exactly. He compares the development of AI to the Industrial Revolution. Ultimately it led to amazing advancements like improvements in life expectancy and all that.
Right.
But the path to get there was anything but smooth.
Definitely not.
The Industrial Revolution also gave us empires, totalitarian regimes, devastating world wars, all in the name of progress.
It's a reminder that even with good intentions, new tech can be misused in some pretty catastrophic ways. So he's saying we need to learn from those mistakes and be more careful with AI.
Yeah.
But what are some of the failed experiments that he's worried about?
Well, he sees social media algorithms as a prime example. Remember, he gives that interaction an F grade.
Yeah, he didn't hold back there.
Yeah. He argues that those algorithms, while seemingly harmless, on the surface, they've actually destabilized democracies by manipulating what we see and what we believe. They've eroded trust and made it almost impossible to have reasonable conversations.
It's like we're all trapped in these echo chambers, constantly bombarded with information that just confirms our biases. It's like, it's unsettling to think these algorithms have so much power over how we see the world.
And he points out this interesting fact that one of the first jobs to be automated was the news editor.
Oh, wow.
Algorithms now decide what we see and read, and their criteria are far different from a human editor who might consider things like accuracy, fairness, diverse perspectives,
So we need to be aware of that power they have and how it can shape our worldview. But is there anything we can do about it? It feels like we're at the mercy of these tech giants who control the platforms.
It's a tough one for sure. Harari and Raskin argue we need to shift the incentives that drive AI development right now. It's too often about maximizing profit or engagement, even if it comes at the cost of, societal well-being.
Like that example with Facebook refusing to remove the reshare button.
Exactly. They knew it was spreading misinformation, but the pull of engagement was too strong. They chose profit over the common good, basically.
Right. So how do we change that? How do we make sure AI is used in a way that actually benefits humanity as a whole?
They suggest we need to start thinking about AI in a more holistic way, not just focusing on the potential benefits, but really considering the risks and developing safeguards.
Safeguards like what?
Well, transparency is key. People need to know when they're interacting with AI and how it's making decisions. They even propose regulations to ban counterfeit humans.
Counterfeit humans. That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But think about it. If you're having an online conversation, you have a right to know if you're talking to a real person or a chatbot. Right?
Absolutely. It would be a huge breach of trust if I found out I'd been pouring my heart out to a machine.
Exactly. And that's why they're advocating for these regulations to maintain a sense of authenticity and trust, especially as AI becomes more integrated into our lives.
Okay, so transparency is crucial, but is that enough? It seems like we need more than just rules. We need a fundamental shift in how we think about and approach AI.
You're right. It's not just about external controls. It's about cultivating a sense of responsibility among those who are developing and deploying AI.
Like building an ethical framework?
Yeah, something like that. They suggest that we should be investing at least as much in understanding and steering AI as we are in developing it. They even propose this 25% rule.
25% rule? What's that?
It's like how our bodies dedicate about 25% of our energy to the immune system. They say we need to build a social immune system for AI.
Oh, interesting. So what would that look like in practice?
It would involve creating robust institutions, regulations, norms, to protect us from the potential harms of AI. Things like independent oversight bodies, ethical guidelines for AI development mechanisms for public accountability.
Makes sense. We can't just assume AI will automatically be used for good. We have to actively shape its development and use to align with our values.
Exactly. And it's not just about preventing negative outcomes. It's about harnessing the power of AI to actually solve some of the world's biggest problems.
Climate change, poverty, disease.
Exactly. Those are all areas where AI could make a huge difference. But they caution against relying on it as a silver bullet. We can't just outsource critical thinking and decision-making to machines.
So it's a balancing act, embracing the potential of AI, but recognizing its limitations and the need for human guidance.
Precisely. And it all comes back to that core theme, trust. If we can't solve the trust problem between humans, we'll never be able to govern AI effectively.
It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. You're right. It all comes back to trust. But they argue that social media has actually worsened this trust deficit, haven't they?
That's right. They point out that social media has created this world where we're constantly suspicious, questioning motives, retreating into our own little echo chambers, and it makes it so much harder to have those open and honest conversations that are essential for building trust.
So how do we rebuild trust in this age of AI? How do we make sure AI actually enhances human connection rather than drives us further apart?
Well, those are the big questions we need to grapple with, and to really delve into those, I think we need to explore the solutions they offer in more detail.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the trust issue especially, but how do we move forward? How do we rebuild that trust and ensure AI is actually a force for good?
Well, they emphasize understanding the incentives behind AI development. If it's all about profit or engagement, we're going to see more AI that erodes trust, just like with social media.
Right, like that Facebook example, refusing to remove the reshare button, even though they knew it was spreading misinformation.
Yeah.
It's like we want to be connected, but not at the expense of truth and facts.
Exactly. And Harari and Raskin argue that we need to shift those incentives, prioritizing human well-being and social cohesion over short-term gains, basically changing how we think about technology and what it's for.
So not just tweaking algorithms, but a deeper change in values.
Exactly. And they're big on transparency, knowing when we're interacting with AI. That's crucial, but it goes deeper.
Yeah.
We need transparency in how AI is designed, the data. It's trained on its decision-making processes.
It's like wanting to see the source code of society, right?
Yeah.
So much is hidden. If we're going to trust these systems, we need to understand how they work.
I like that analogy. And they don't stop there. They emphasize human oversight. We can't just hand over responsibility to machines no matter how smart they get. We have to stay engaged, ask the tough questions.
Which is where those international institutions come in, right? Having neutral experts to monitor AI development, that seems more important than ever.
Absolutely. It kind of checks and balances for AI, providing unbiased information, coordinating efforts to steer AI in the right direction.
It's interesting they also talk about how dictatorships might actually be more vulnerable to the control problem with AI. I thought it'd be the other way around.
I know it seems counterintuitive, right? But they argue that in a dictatorship, if you control the leader, you control the whole system, whereas democracies, with their distributed power, might be more resilient to AI manipulation.
So our messy democratic systems could be an advantage in the age of AI.
It's a possibility they raise, and it highlights the need for global cooperation, finding common ground on AI governance. Even if we disagree on other things, the stakes are just too high.
Okay, transparency, oversight, shifting incentives. But what about the empathy piece?
Yeah.
How do we make sure AI enhances human connection instead of diminishing it?
That's a big one. They argue that we need AI that promotes genuine understanding and connection, not just mimicking emotions superficially. We have to be wary of AI that plays to our narcissism, makes us feel good without fostering real empathy.
Right. Technology can easily become a crutch, preventing us from the hard work of building relationships and understanding different perspectives.
Absolutely. They even suggest this radical idea banning business models that commodify human intimacy.
Wow. What if we had done that with attention back in 2012, before social media as we know it took off?
It's a thought-provoking idea for sure. So much of the tech industry profits from exploiting our vulnerabilities. What if we designed AI to help us become more empathetic, more connected?
That's a vision worth fighting for, and it starts with recognizing that we're creating AI, shaping it. We're responsible for its impact on the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So for our listeners today, what can they do in the face of all this?
Stay informed, stay engaged, ask questions. Don't just accept the hype, demand transparency from companies and policymakers, and think about what kind of future you want to create with this technology.
It's a call to action. The choices we make now will shape the world of tomorrow. And this isn't just about AI. It's about the kind of society we want to live in and how technology fits into that.
Exactly. This conversation reminds us that the future is not set in stone. It's up to each of us to decide what role we play in shaping this AI-powered world. The possibilities are incredible, but so is the responsibility. It's on all of our shoulders.